Hi, and welcome to Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. I'm Nick Capozzi, joined today by Sky Sperling. Sky, we are in the Pacific Northwest among the trees. We're actually in Eugene, Oregon today because we did the first show for Razzball's 32 and 32 and 32. That's right, 32 drafts, 32 days, 32 cities. Kicked off in Seattle yesterday, and today, fortunately, we're heading down to California to do the San Francisco and Oakland shows tomorrow. But we got to say goodbye to you, Sky. You've been such a part of this so far.
It was great being able to come up to Seattle. I relished every moment of it, but this just makes me hungry and ready for Chicago when I get to land there on August 30th. So I'll see you there.
Absolutely. So we are literally driving around the country again, heading to San Francisco. If you want to join us at the Rec Room on Wednesday, August the 6th, 7 p.m. in San Francisco. It's at 1390 California. Come on out and hang out with us. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got a big party happening that day. Okay, we are going to cover a little bit of news right now. Let's start with the big news of the day. Monty Ball of the Denver Broncos had an appendectomy. He's out at least for the preseason. Now, watching sports as many years as I have, when guys have their appendix removed, it is minor surgery, but the problem is that you are going through the abdominals. So the muscles, obviously go through trauma, and that's the issue with coming back. So what's your take on Monty Ball so far and how this is going to shake out?
I think my main concern is that this all comes down to opportunity. I think Monty Ball was coming in. He sounded great so far in training camp in terms of picking up pass pro. That was a big thing last year why he didn't get the job ahead of Noshawn Moreno, was that he needed to learn how to protect Peyton Manning. And now he's not going to have those weeks to gel with him during the preseason, which is huge. And it's going to give these guys an opportunity to prove what they have, whether it's C.J. Anderson or Ronnie Hillman. And Ronnie Hillman right now looks like he's becoming a bigger part of the offense. In the long run, I'm not concerned, but I do think this might drop him a little bit in ADP. And I would actually I'd start taking a look at him as a bargain if he starts slipping.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, the only concern, again, for me is that it does take some time to come back from that type of surgery. He's going in the first round right now, which is hard for me to swallow. And the reason is that you can't assume he's going to come back and do what Noshawn Marino did last year. You can't just plug and play him. The reason Marino got so much playing time last year as well is one thing is he is a great blocker. And the question is, will Monty Ball be able to block? And if not, Hillman's not a big guy. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. For me personally, again, if he's missing the preseason, having that appendix surgery, I'm probably going to wait. It might even have to be as far as the third round before I'd be comfortable taking him off that kind of injury. But with that said, if he does slide, there is some good value there. Where's the earliest you'd pick him right now?
Right now, in a standard 12 team, with these types of concerns, I think he should be slipping into the second round, late second round. But in the end, it's always about the market that you're in, and every draft is different. If there's a run on running backs and you need to jump in there, you feel like you need to, he might slip back up. But I definitely would avoid him in first rounds at this point.
Yeah. Also, talking about things that are being avoided, we've been trying to get you to get your hair cut. You've been avoiding that, so we'll still work on that. Hopefully before you get to Chicago anyway. Okay, speaking of Chicago, news out of there, Martellus Bennett suspended indefinitely for knocking down a teammate in practice. Now, this is going to be a suspension issued by the Chicago Bears, so we're not going to look at a long suspension here. I think we're talking, they're saying 1 to 4 games. I'm thinking probably maybe 1 game because they need him. Dante Rosario's the backup there. What do you think?
No, it's definitely true. They were talking about it being mainly just a preseason thing and not necessarily an in-season thing. So at least there's that in terms of the suspension. But for Martellus Bennett, I think the main concern is this has been a telling tale that he's not had a good camp and he has not worked out well. Even the coaches have been saying they've been a little frustrated with how he's been playing. The unfortunate thing with that is that, like you said, the only upside in Dante Rosario is frustrating Antonio Gates owners from last year when he had that huge 3 TD game and everyone went to the box score wondering who the tight end that scored. Yeah, it wasn't your guy. It was Dante.
Yeah.
But there's no upside there for drafting him, even if there's suspension or trouble with Martellus.
Right. There are some tight ends in that area. We'll get to them later. We'll go over a couple of tight end sleepers a little bit later on in today's show. But I think the issue is Bennett is actually, he only had 40-some-odd catches last year. But in that offense, there's always the opportunity to be effective. So we're going to have to monitor and see how that situation goes down. Okay, next up, speaking still of Chicago, Marcus Wilson broke his clavicle. He's the third wide receiver in that offense. I think the thing here that we have to consider is that when you break a clavicle, it's very difficult to come back from that type of injury when you play football, because it's so much of your body makes impact, from I need a kinesiologist here, but basically, from the upper part of your body. So when you're making that kind of contact to come back from that kind of injury. Now, it's not necessarily that Marcus Wilson is a big loss, but what's going to happen now to Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey? Are they going to look at more coverage?
That's the biggest issue, is that I do think you're going to see an uptick in targets for, the main guys that are getting drafted there, and Alshon and Brandon Marshall, but that's not always necessarily a good thing to limit your amount of targets. Like I said, if the black unicorn is regressing, along with Marcus not being around, that's going to hurt, because it's going to move down to Josh Morgan, who has not been a successful wide receiver so far in the NFL, and they had really high hopes for Marcus being able to step up for them. So I think it'll be a great volume play for those guys, but I also think it's going to cut down the efficiency of Cutler and that offense as a whole, which will be a little frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely, especially when you fall to Josh Gordon as your number 3. It's definitely going to knock those guys down. Just a couple pegs, but still something that you want to consider. Josh Morgan, obviously, again, has never developed into the player that I think people hoped when he was drafted by the 49ers. Okay, next up, Arian Foster of the Houston Texans. He's been, a lot of people are kind of on the fence on him. Does he have one big year left in him? Are the Texans going to run this year? I think he could have a big year. I think the Texans are going to run a lot, because with that defense, they're going to want to stay in games. But here's the thing. This is a guy that apparently contemplated retirement in the offseason. That's not a guy I want to draft.
No, especially where he's going. I've been seeing him go in the second round. When you're a 27-year-old running back, and he was talking about going and seeing one of the all-time greats in a wheelchair, and that kind of changed his perspective on the sport that he was in. Those aren't things you want to hear from a guy you're drafting in the second round, expecting to be, your RB2 or possibly your RB1. He's a guy that I already kind of had in the back of my mind to avoid unless he came at a value, and now he's just completely off my draft list at this point.
So does that then bump up Andre Johnson?
That's difficult. It is still Ryan Fitzpatrick out there. I can't say that that's necessarily the greatest go in terms of volume play. I am in on DeAndre Hopkins. I do think we see a bump up from him, but yeah, that Houston offense is a little questionable at best at this point, is what I'd say.
I'm curious to see how that goes down, because I haven't been as high on DeAndre. I love DeAndre Hopkins, but in that offense this year, I've had a lot of concerns. But you made a good argument the other day when we were rolling along in the Razmobile that Josh Gordon did what he did last year with a combination of quarterbacks, none that were particularly great. So there is some upside for Hopkins. Is he so? Let me ask you, at the end of the day, who's going to be the most fantasy-relevant player on the Texans this year?
Ooh, you're putting me on the spot.
Yes, I am.
I actually do want to go with Nuke. I think it's going to be his time to shine. That team, it's stuck in neutral. They need to move on. They need to start making moves to where they're looking towards their future, and DeAndre Hopkins just is that. And that's the guy that I think, if I want to own a piece of the Houston offense, he's still priced correctly. And he's on the rise. So he's my guy if I'm picking anyone from Houston at this point.
Okay, absolutely. Don't forget, you can play DraftKings with us every day. Enter promo code RASBALL when signing up. They'll give you a first-time deposit match and an entry into the nightly Play with the Rasball Crew contest. This is Rasball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. We'll be back in a minute, still among the trees in Eugene, Oregon.
I was never one for traditional dating, which is why I like to meet guys on ArrangementFinders.com. Arrangement Finders puts a twist on dating that works so well, they guarantee you'll find a girl. That's right, guarantee. Sounds too good to be true? Check out these girls on ArrangementFinders.com who are looking to date. She's hot. She's hot. Okay, her, not so much. Anyway, it's free to join, so you've got nothing to lose. Go to Arrangement Finders and meet girls like me who know what you really want.
Welcome back to Rasball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. We're still talking some news here in Eugene, Oregon. Let's talk right now about Kenny Britt. Now, you and I have discussed Kenny Britt a lot this year. We actually went in depth on Monday about him because I did take him in the Rasball Radio Experts League draft on your advice. But now he's officially the number 2 receiver on the Rams. What does that mean for him?
To me, it's huge. This guy, it's never been about talent, and He needs the opportunity again. He tried to blow it in Tennessee, did a darn fine job. He's no longer there. So now he's in St. Louis. He's back with he's back with Fisher. He's going to keep him in line. And,
hopefully Fisher can keep him in. No, but really,
it's true.
Because if he can keep him in line, there's a lot of upside there.
There's extreme upside. You can never tell with these types of situations, but when he was with Fisher, he performed better both on and off the field. So having Fisher around to keep him in line is great, and now he gets to go out there and do what he does best, which is catch balls in the end zone, which Sam Bradford would really like a big target, and now he has one with Kenny Britt.
Yeah, the only concern I have is his knees, because obviously he's had a lot of lower body injuries last couple of years, but he's definitely worth a late-round flyer, I think, especially right now if he is number 2 on the depth chart. Again, both you and I are bigger on Bradford this year than most. What does it mean for Chris Givens, though?
Well, Chris Givens looks like he's slowly losing his role there in St. Louis. It's a little bittersweet. He was a sleeper pick for me last year, and he ended up falling apart. Even before Sam Bradford went down, he didn't end up performing at the level that I expected him to. So this is just a sign that he's slowly declining there on that roster. I don't think he's going to be DFA'd in any way, shape, or form, but I do think there is a question of how much of a role he's going to have at this point moving forward.
Okay, let's talk about the Dolphins. No Sean Marino. He was supposed to be ready, but now they're saying he's likely going to miss the preseason. They've also lost Pouncey out of the offensive line. What does it mean for their offense in general?
Well, I do believe they were bringing in Moreno mainly for his blocking abilities, especially with how many times Ryan Tannehill got sacked last year. I do believe it was an NFL season high of 58. I could be wrong if that was a season high, but I do know that's a lot of times to get hit as a quarterback. Let's say that. So that's a big blow for the offense, especially when they go into when they're trying to pass it out of there. But that also means we have a good guy by the name of Lamar Miller. Right now he's going in the rounds 7 through 9. He was already kind of a value pick, a sneaky value play, and now he's even more so one if he can stay down there, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I really like Lamar Miller a lot. This is a guy who had a higher yard per carry last year than Zach Stacy. Just hasn't had the opportunity. Obviously, he was a big prospect coming out of college, dropped because of multiple knee injuries, but I think there's some upside there for Lamar Miller. How high are you comfortable taking Lamar Miller now?
Given the fact that as long as it's clear that he's going to have the starting role to go and it's his job to lose, I could easily see him sneaking closer to the 5th and 6th rounds. That's up where Rashad Jennings was going when people were still questioning whether or not he was the starting running back. And that's the area where you take a chance on a guy who could end up becoming your bell cow in your backfield. Absolutely.
Now let's head down to Tampa Bay. Tim Wright, the big tight end for the Buccos, has been seen playing in the slot. What is that going to do for Glennon or McCown, whoever winds up being the quarterback there? I mean, if you've got Mike Evans and Vincent Jackson and Tim Wright, holy cow, you want to talk about big trees, holy cow, they might be down in Tampa now.
Yeah, I was about to say, just throw it up in the air and one of them's going to go catch it right now. Tampa Bay is setting themselves up really nicely, and I really like the fact that I love tight ends that aren't tight ends. That's my favorite type of tight end.
There's a lot of jokes there.
Well, I was going to start off with saying, do you know what I like about tight ends?
Just
but
keep going.
I'm going to go there. The big thing is with Tim Wright, he's going to be treated like a wide receiver, and when that's huge. Anytime a tight end gets moved out, he's not on the line blocking, he gets to stay healthier, and he's going to get some more chuck to him than a typical tight end would.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move to Oakland now, where we're heading tomorrow, of course, on the tour. And Denarius Moore, who's a guy talent-wise I love. He is so skilled. He's such an amazing leaper. He kind of reminds me of a Deshaun Jackson light, which is actually a compliment, believe it or not. But now he's been knocked down to the 3rd string. Andre Holmes is going to take over now as the number 2 receiver. How does that shake out in Oakland?
Well, first off, let's face facts. Oakland, they just seem to look at the 40-yard dash time, and they don't pay attention to the rest. That's been their MO, and it's burned them quite a few times. They were really hoping to burn cornerbacks, and it ends up burning their own offense. Denarius Moore sliding down last year. I believe he had around 46 catches, around 695 yards, and 5 touchdowns in 13 games. That's probably his ceiling when it's all said and done. And we also have the fact that Matt Schaub's now in Oakland, who, historically hasn't been a huge chucker down the field. So I already liked Andre Holmes. He's a crisp, clean route runner. I do think he's going to fit that offense better. I think him and Schaub are going to gel, and he's one of those guys I'm actually high on, especially where he's going in drafts.
So, okay, now you're high on Holmes, but let's talk about Matt Schaub. Is he sneakily becoming a relevant quarterback? Because in the beginning, I was not on him at all. But, I'm starting to think maybe there's some upside there. I see that every year with the Raiders. Or is he just going to be similar to what Carson Palmer did when he was with Oakland?
Carson Palmer, the junkyard fantasy dog. We always loved him in the fourth quarter. But the big thing is Schaub's confidence was shattered last year. He's getting another shot. He's turning a new leaf. I do think he has a great opportunity to turn this around.
All right, this is Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. We'll be back right after this, hopefully, as long as the tree doesn't fall down on us.
I was never one for traditional dating, which is why I like to meet guys on ArrangementFinders.com. Arrangement Finders puts a twist on dating that works so well, they guarantee you'll find a girl. That's right, guarantee. Sounds too good to be true? Check out these girls on ArrangementFinders.com who are looking to date. She's hot. She's hot. Okay, her, not so much. Anyway, it's free to join, so you've got nothing to lose. Go to Arrangement Finders and meet girls like me who know what you really want.
Welcome back to Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network, again from Eugene, Oregon. It's beautiful here. This is a pretty nice place to live, Sky. You did pretty good, landed on your feet. Not bad for a guy who writes for Razzball. All right, let's talk some deep sleepers right now. And I want to go a little bit deeper than what we've talked about traditionally. And let's start with tight ends. Let's talk about, we were talking earlier about the Raiders, what's going to happen with that offense. What about Michael Rivera in Oakland? Can he be fantasy relevant this year as a tight end?
I definitely think so. It's one of those things. Matt Schaub has historically leaned pretty heavily on the tight end sets, whether it was Garrett Graham or Owen Daniels, and even down to Ryan Griffin. He loves throwing it to the tight end. So in that scenario, I really like Rivera's setup for this year. I do think that offensive line is still questionable in terms of pass blocking ability. So he's going to need to get out of there quick. So a lot of short routes to the tight end. Good for PPR. Maybe tack on 5 to 7 touchdowns. I think you're looking good with Michael Rivera. Okay,
good stuff. We mentioned earlier Tim Wright from Tampa playing in the slot right now for the Buccaneers. How early are you comfortable taking him?
I'm letting him fall in the draft to me. Right now, I think he's even going behind Michael Rivera. I think he's the TE32 off the draft board, which to me, given what he did last year.
It's almost like Canadian Football League level tight end.
To me, last year, he was one of those nice surprises down the stretch. He had about 55 catches, 571 yards, and 5 touchdowns in really limited play when it was all said and done. So I'm excited to see them use him more as a wide receiver, and disguised tight ends. I love them. I can't fight that. So I could easily see him bumping it up to maybe 65 to 70 catches, maybe hitting up around the 700 to 800 yard mark, and maybe boosting up even to 6-7 touchdowns.
Interesting. Okay, Gavin Escobar, the Cowboys, was a mid-round pick last year. A lot of upside, very athletic, one of those field-stretching tight ends. Yes. Jason Witten has been around forever. He's kind of one of the old man, the last of the old guard at the tight end position, if you will. Are we going to see Gavin Escobar getting used more in that Dallas offense, which could be huge this year because they're going to be playing from behind a lot with the shape of their defense?
They're already talking about it in camp that they really want to get Gavin Escobar more involved in the offense. Like you said, Jason Witten, I do believe he's 32 years old. Not everyone can be Tony Gonzalez. Not everyone can be finding the fountain of youth and going into their 40s playing tight end. And Witten's numbers actually took a fairly big downturn last year from the year he had before. And they also have up-and-comers in wide receivers in West and Des Bryant. I do like the fact that they're going to start looking at Gavin Escobar more in the end zone. That's going to be where his bread and butter is going to be made. So he may be a boom or bust play from week to week, but I do think he's going to be a touchdown threat this year.
Okay, fantastic. Yesterday we were in Seattle. We talked with Jared Patterson of Rant Sports. He broke down some of the Seahawks for us. One of the guys we discussed was Luke Wilson. Zach Miller, the starter in Seattle, but Wilson, again, one of those, let's say in vogue, new age tight ends that are really kind of, really big wide receivers. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on Luke Wilson's upside for this season?
He kind of falls back into what I was talking about earlier about being an end zone threat. They lost Sidney Rice for the year. There are some guys there that I like. Curse is one of them to get some of those red zone touches. But they need a guy to throw it into the end zone, to lob it to, and Luke Wilson is definitely going to be that guy. They need somebody with some height and some size in the back of that end zone. And I could easily see him being a boom or bust play from week to week, but still being a huge touchdown threat.
Fair enough. Okay, let's talk now some wide receiver sleepers. Kenny Stills, I don't think is considered really a sleeper. But tell me why you're so high on him.
You know, Marcus Colston, he had a bit of a down year last year.
He's old.
That's the big part.
He's older than these trees.
He's getting long in the tooth too. You know, it's one of those. Every single team needs to move on. You need to make the next step. And they were grooming Kenny Stills last year. He had some great spurts in there. And I think part of the reason he's so low, I do believe he's wide receiver 57 on most charts, is because of a hamstring strain right now. I think once he's back on the field, you're going to start seeing him zoom up the boards. He's going to become a major threat with Drew Brees.
Speaking of grooming, obviously you didn't bring a razor up to Seattle with you, so I think we're definitely going to have to take in not just for a haircut, but also a hot shave. Okay, back to wide receivers. Dexter McCluster in Tennessee this year. A lot of buzz around this guy, but to me, you really got to show me something, because I kept hearing for years how great Dexter McCluster was going to be and how versatile he was, and he's done diddly. So tell me why he's a deep sleeper for you.
Well, first off, let's make sure you're in the right league, because I went and looked in Yahoo, and he's only listed as running back, so it was very confusing to me. I was asking around trying to find out, well, which leagues do you play in where he is a wide receiver? Right. So the cool thing about him is he's probably going to be dually eligible in your league. That's one thing to keep in mind that's already kind of cool where he's going in drafts. But the big thing to me is off-season wise, they talked about him filling a Danny Woodhead role in that offense. Danny Woodhead last year, 76 receptions, 605 yards, and 6 touchdowns, and that's just what he did through the air. And they're both 5'8". Granted, 30 pounds the lesser than Danny Woodhead, which is kind of a hard thing to fathom at 170 pounds. But McCluster has shake. If they can get him out and wide open in the field, similar numbers to what Danny Woodhead put up last year, and those were great RB2 numbers and possibly WR3 numbers.
All right, good stuff. My sugar daddy of the day, brought to you by Arrangement Finders. That's by arrangementfinders.com. That is the player that I believe is going to drastically outperform his ADP is Gavin Escobar of the Dallas Cowboys. I think he's definitely worth a late round get. Don't forget, you can always lock up your league fees for free at sportsvault.net. This is Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. We'll be back tomorrow, and we got Oakland and San Fran for you. That's right, Bay Area, we're coming to you next.